Oh. 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 Welcome to Meaningful Morning. Many seekers ask me, how can they practice self-care? And the way to understand this so that one can practice this is to understand who they are. So who are you? There are some teachers and organizations who facilitate self-care in the form of asana, only asana, in which case the person who's receiving this and feeling this, they think they're the body. Making this more secular, that's about the tasty meals and the massages and so on. Some teachers and organizations, they facilitate self-care through kriya. Breathe like this, control this. And so you start to feel you are not the body, but you are the breath. Some teachers and organizations, they facilitate self-care through mantras. This mantra in this way at this time. And so one comes to feel that they are their mind. In a secular way, this would be where one is putting in effort to facilitate relationships, vacations, birthday parties, and so on. Some teachers and organizations, they facilitate self-care through jnana, through insights into the purpose of what they do, the purpose of who they are. Then one comes to feel powerful. Because jnana relates to the intellect, and that is the most powerful equipment we have. So as you engage in self-care, is it going to the spa or a kriya or a mantra technique that's patented and you pay for? Or is it reflections? In Meaningful Mornings, this is what we tune into because we are more than the body, breath, mind. And for those who have shraddha in this jnana, this knowledge about who they are, they have faith, they fasten themselves to this jnana, they follow through with this jnana, this becomes vijnana or wisdom. The wisdom that they are not the ego, that they are divine. Many times I've shared, as you associate, so you think. As you think, so you develop. This is shared a lot in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 11th skanda or section, for those who are joining our upcoming silence workshop, our silent sangha, this month we're going to focus on janma, which means attitudes, and dhyana, which means identifications that affect your thinking and developing. In Bhagavad Gita's chapter 17, association is also understood as inputting. As you input, so you think, so you develop. And inputting is also known as food. Association, more specifically input, more specifically food. Your food affects your thinking affects your developing. This is not a new teaching. In chapter 15, verse 14, this is the food shloka or verse. I mentioned that when we studied this. Shri Krishna shares there are 4 types of food that one engages in or should engage in. Food that is chewed, food that is to be drunk, food that is to be sucked, and food that is to be licked. 4 types of food. In Ayurveda, there is a framework of shadrasa, or 6 tastes. 4 textures, 6 tastes. These are, in English, food that is sweet, salty, sour, spicy, bitter, and astringent. The food we eat, every meal should have these 6 tastes. Now, the implication of Bhagavad Gita's chapter 15, verse 14, the implication of Ayurveda's 6 rasas is for one to become more careful with food, more generally input, more generally association. Please understand the vision that Sri Krishna is offering with these verses. It is not to be foodful. Then one becomes a foodie. It is to be mindful. Being careful about how you buy food, prepare food, cook food, eat food, not for the food, but for the mind. By show of hands, how many of you are understanding what Sri Krishna is trying to direct us to? Okay, good. In verses 8, 9, and 10, Sri Krishna shares in verse 8, food that makes you comfortable is sattvic. One feels more faith. How do you know this? Because you want less and work more. In verse 9, food that makes one feel discomfort is rajasic. One's faith is not lots, but less. And this is characterized by ati. Ati means very or extreme. Foods that are very or extreme, they make us have less faith. And in verse 10, it is food that makes one uncomfortable. That is tamasic food. One's nurturing is of little faith. That doesn't help one. Many of the terms used in verse 10 relate to leftovers. Leftovers. And you know, I would share the importance of eating leftovers in the sense that food waste is the worst for the environment. But here, when Shri Krishna is talking about leftover, it is someone who's careless with their food. They buy too much. They cook too much. They take too much. They waste too much. It's a very leftover culture. Sharing a couple of more insights before we shift over to yajna. Once, a person, I'm not going to call them a student, had gone to a master and said, I've heard that those who search for God never go hungry. They always find food. Is this true? And the master said, yes. So then this person said, if I go search for God, will I find food? Will this come to me? And the master said, no. So then this person asked, what's the difference? And that master said, because you're not going to find God, you're going to find food. God is auxiliary to what you're going for. Everyone caught that? The difference between being mindful and foodful. Puja Swami Tejomayananda is shared. When the heart is full, the stomach is full. Instead of trying to make the stomach full, just makes you uncomfortable, make the heart full. That's why this relates to Shraddha or faith, particularly sattvic faith, when one has lots of this. We continue. Verse 11. Apalakankshabir yagnyaha vididrishto ya ijyate yashtavyam eveti manaha samadhaya sa satvikaha. Joy. Powerful verse. Yajna, that's the next facet of the syllabus that's being explained. Ahara, now yajna. 3 verses on yajna. Here's the first. Yajna should be aphala kangshibihi, which means as you're dedicated, one's desire or want should be aphala, not for a result, not for a gain. So one should be dedicated with the desire to be desireless. That is an awesome thought. When one is dedicated, the dedication itself brings about fulfillment. How many of you have experienced this? And that's the whole saying. The journey brings joy. If you're waiting for the destination to bring joy, then you've not understood the journey. Dedication itself makes one feel fulfilled. Ijjate, this dedication that is offered, vididrishtaha, should have the vision of the vidhi, that is the map. Our dedication should flow with the direction of our map, our trust triangle. A reflection on this. It is hard for us to do anything without a desire. So have the desire for priti, have the artha of priti, and we facilitate a puja, putting this together, it's called prityartha. Why am I engaged in this puja? To please my divinity. So as you're dedicated, if you have a desire, let it be for the divine to be pleased. And if that's too abstract, let the reason why you're being dedicated be for purity. to purify your inner world. When we think of results and gains, this tends to be external. This makes us an extrovert. But if you go to school, you go to work, you parent, etc., for purity, then that is a yajna, that is sattvic. It helps one to be more faithful. Yastavyam or yashtavyam, this ought to be offered. This is the right way to live and the right manaha or mindset. I'm reading Pujaswami Chinmayananda's writing. Very clear. Sacrifice is our duty. This is the motive that propels the good to act in life. They suffer no dissipation of their inner energies, either through anxieties to drive themselves to a particular goal, or through their restlessness in hurting the environments to settle themselves into a pre-planned and preconceived system of harmony. Their mind is ever at rest in its own native satisfaction. They are consciously happy that they are pursuing a line of action which is most conducive to the welfare of all. Such actions are classified under the sattvic type of sacrifices. Very, very, very clear. Finally, samadhaya, being fixed or absorbed. Saha, sattvikaha, the one who is following this plan in quarter 1, 2, and 3, when they're absorbed in this, this is how they live. This is sattvic yajna. In the context of shraddha, they become more faithful. They have lots of faith, and this grows. As your faith, so are you. This is very practical. When you feel you're an instrument, it is easier to feel the body, breath, mind, and intellect are equipment. That's what liberation is, where you grow out of being an equipment and grow into having an equipment. And if I can say this in a slang way, one is less of a tool then. From inspiration to application, your application was for you to go to our website, chinmayaniagara.com, to go to our initiatives, and to read and research about Elevate Her Story. How many of you did this? We have now raised over $3,000 to help our mothers, children and grandchildren, her daughters and her grandchildren, doesn't matter what gender they are. I often think to myself, in the context of these verses, we have lots of food in our home. Who needs more food, me or the person on the street? And it's so black and white for us, the person on the street. But now making this more subtle in terms of resources, what will you do with $1? What will someone who's experiencing domestic violence and or child abuse do with that $1? I feel that's the right narrative to grow out of selfishness. What will you do with that $1? You know the answer. Your application for this morning is this verse I just read, Pujaswami Chinmayananda's writing. I want you to discuss it with 3 people today. This paragraph, you read it, you share it. I want you to discuss it with 3 people today. 3 people who are not in Meaningful Mornings. I've already done that for you. Shanti, shanti, shantihi. Be joy.